I'm thrilled that you are all here tonight with us. I'm especially thrilled to recognize our two honorees, the great American statesman, Jon Huntsman Jr., and the brilliant graphic designer, Tal Huber. I'll say a lot more about these extraordinary individuals, but first, some thoughts on the day and the times we are living in. We normally hold this dinner on November 9th, the anniversary of Kristallnacht. But because it fell on the Shabbat this year, we postponed it until tonight. I now realize that this later date, November 12th, may be even more important, and I'll explain why. In 1938, the world was shocked by the ferocity of the attacks on Jews throughout Germany and Austria on Kristallnacht. But in the following days, the reaction came close to universal silence. And because of that tepid response, Hitler said in a meeting he had in Berlin 4 days later that he could do whatever he wanted to the Jews because no one would care. In much the same way, on October 7th, the world reacted with shock at the barbaric attacks on Jewish people in Israel. For a few days after October 7th, the world stood with the Jewish people. The Israeli flag appeared on the Eiffel Tower and the Brandenburg Gate. But once again, just like Kristallnacht, within days, that quickly faded. And in the most bizarre inversion of reality, it was Israel, not Hamas, that was condemned in the media, in the UN, and most of all, on college campuses everywhere. And once again, just last week, when mobs attacked Jews in Amsterdam, it was the Jewish victims who were blamed for inciting the anti-Semitic riots. This is a pattern we have seen over and over again, and that's why the World Jewish Congress was created. In 1936, a small group of Jews gathered in Geneva to alert the world of the growing danger coming out of Nazi Germany. They created the World Jewish Congress for this purpose. However, at that time, they did not have the influence or the power to make an impact. This is very timely because at that time, they also saw that one of the first targets of the Nazis was schools and universities. Jewish professors were fired, Jewish students were kicked out, and the curriculum was changed to Nazi indoctrination. Unfortunately, that is exactly what we have witnessed here in America and across Europe today. Educators and education has been replaced by the far left, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic indoctrination. Since October 7th, 62 colleges and 43 elementary schools across this country are under investigation for anti-Semitism and could lose their federal fundings under Title VI. I never thought I'd see such anti-Semitism in America, and we can't pretend this isn't happening. Jewish enrollment in many of our top universities has dropped more than half because there are now quotas again placed on Jewish applicants, just like earlier we had in the early part of the 20th century. Today, many Jewish students don't even bother to apply to these top schools because they know they'll have a little chance of getting in. We all watched the growing anti-Jewish incitement in classrooms and on campuses, along with the cowardly administrators, literally afraid of their own students. And now the same indoctrination is taking place in elementary schools, K through 12. Israel has been totally erased from maps in these elementary schools. There's no mention of the Holocaust. And when Israel is mentioned, it is as a colonial occupier. And it's not just Israel that is a colonial occupier, it's also America. Students are taught that Israel, America, and even Western civilization is evil. I've seen this curriculum that bears this out. You look at this curriculum and you realize what this curriculum says about what teachers should teach. Many of us grew up reciting the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. That was tossed out decades ago. America the Beautiful? Now our young people are taught there's nothing beautiful about America at all. In 2 weeks, we will celebrate one of the most wonderful holidays of the year, Thanksgiving. Families will gather to enjoy the bounty of this great land and give thanks for our good fortune, or at least that was the original intent. It is also based on the historic fact of pilgrims reaching out to Native Americans in friendship. But now, Thanksgiving has turned into a day that sees these same pilgrims not as brave souls who risked everything to escape religious persecution in Europe. They are now seen as colonial occupiers as well. In fact, there is even a drive to change the name from Thanksgiving to, this is a good one, Indigenous Peoples Appreciation and Remembrance Day. This is hardly an American phenomenon. The world Jewish has been watching this self-hatred throughout Europe, in France, in England, Holland, especially in Spain. We are fighting this battle worldwide in 100 communities on every continent. That is why the World Jewish Congress is now focusing all our efforts on education and fighting this Marxist indoctrination that has infiltrated our schools throughout the world. We saw this happening in 1936 when the world would not listen, and we hear the same silence today, and it's deafening. None of us can be silent. I can assure you that I will not be silent, and the World Jewish Congress will not be silent in the face of this hatred towards the Jewish state and the Jewish people. Even when it comes from teachers' union spreading lies about Israel, on boards of education or representatives in Congress, as well as certain world leaders, and especially in the UN. For the last 88 years, the World Jewish Congress has focused on politics, but today we're adding education to our focus and the global fight against anti-Semitism, extremism, and the assault on Western civilization. In 2 months, we will go to Poland to observe the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It keeps moving. The vast majority of students never heard of Auschwitz, and many don't believe that 6 million Jews were slaughtered. It's not their fault. It's because teachers won't teach it. We cannot afford to lose our education system, because if we do, we lose the next generation, and then we lose our future and everything that Western civilization has struggled to achieve, which is the perfect segue to this year's Herzl Award winner. Very few people have stood up to this radical mob that has taken over many of our institutions. Most people are afraid, but there is one man who has challenged them directly with a clear vision and strength that serves as a shining example for all of us. I have known John Huntsman for many years when we worked together in our alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania. I have admired John when he brilliantly represented our country as ambassador to China and Russia, two of the most important and difficult postings in the world. And he was appointed by a Democrat and a Republican president. Before that, He served as ambassador to Singapore, and somehow he found time to be elected governor of Utah. But I never admired John more than this past year when he did something extraordinary. This man showed a courage that makes us all proud to be human beings. In a public statement to then President of Penn, Liz McGill, John Huntsman said, "The university's silence in the face of the reprehensible and historic Hamas evil against the people of Israel, when the only response should be outright condemnation, is a new low. Silence," said John, "is anti-Semitism." I want to repeat those words. Silence is anti-Semitism. And after the October 7 massacres, when colleges and universities erupted in anti-Semitic riots, it seemed only Jewish alumni responded. When I wrote my public letter to Penn, threatening to cut off funds that went viral, I was joined by Mark Rowan and a few others. That made sense. We're all Jewish. But people wondered why John Huntsman, a Mormon from Utah, was so vocal in his support as well. Why would a Mormon from Utah stand up and place himself in the eye of the storm for the Jewish people? Here's the answer. It's because John Huntsman believes in religious freedom, because John Huntsman believes in fairness, logic, and common sense, because John Huntsman knows that it's not just the Jewish people. Eventually, all people who don't say yes to the mob will be targeted. That's because John Huntsman is one of those rare individuals who is not afraid to face the mob. That is the one more vital trait that John Huntsman possesses. That, I believe, is most important. He has profound courage, a trait that is too often in short supply. John Huntsman is a courageous man. That makes him perfect honoree for the Theodor Herzl Award, because John Huntsman personifies that courage. Instead of leading a comfortable life in Europe, Herzl gave up everything and gave his life to reestablishing the Jewish state in our eternal homeland. Here is something I believe. Courage is the only way to defeat totalitarianism. And people like John Huntsman make others courageous when they see what he has done. That is how courage spreads. Thank you.